I'm doing a three-part review of Half His Age by Jennette McCurdy. Here's part two. I'm going to talk about the prose and the structure. I will say it took me until probably the second act to really understand what I believe McCurdy was doing with this prose. I, like many people, did find that this prose felt maybe eerily similar to McCurdy's memoir. I wasn't 100% sold on Waldo's shopping addiction. I will lead with that. And I do think that some of that has to do with McCurdy's prose. There's a sense in the way that Waldo describes her shopping addiction that she has more self-awareness than it feels is particularly appropriate to the addictive and impulsive behaviors. Like the way that McCurdy describes these items and their uselessness, it's almost as though McCurdy is narrating what she wants us to take away from those descriptions. I do think that the shopping addiction is a good framing device for the story. For me, it was a little bit clunky and heavy-handed, but I don't think that it was a failure of the book by any means. The directness of Waldo's narrative voice works really well when it comes to describing Corgi and how Corgi is disgusting, but she wants him anyway. The fact that we get very little detail about Corgi outside of Waldo's feelings for him, the fact that he is like a cardboard cutout of the type of man who would do this to a girl, I think that works really well. Structurally, I found this book really interesting. I do feel that the second act of this story is the strongest, where she moves from euphoria and obsession and instead becomes resentful and even more manipulative. To me, that was very effective atmospherically because it recontextualized the first half of the novel. I think part of what people find so disturbing about books like this is that any character who is partaking in something that is so clearly vile, who exhibits feelings of euphoria, excitement, or positivity around these events, is deeply upsetting and disturbing to read. And I get that. But I found that after that turn in the second act, the first act actually became more revolting in retrospect. Structurally, I think that was great. And I would like to make an honorable mention to the passage where Waldo tells Corgi that she was never interested in creative writing and she only did it for him. This felt like a little subversion of the typical power play between an abuser and a child, but I really liked it. And I think that this is one of those moments that really pinpoints McCurdy's intentions in writing this book, because Waldo does make her own choices that drive the narrative. And I think that her impulsivity in pursuing Corgi and then her impulsivity in admitting to him that she manipulated him by pretending to care about something that he cared about is so quintessentially childish and stubborn, and I do feel that it was very effective. Conversely, the ending of this book left me with a gaping hole. I felt a lack of closure, which was quite upsetting because I had finished the book, but it was lingering inside of me. The longer I sat with it, though, the more grateful I was that Corgi didn't get his comeuppance in this story. Part of the art of this story is the fact that Waldo is the story. Her emotions are the narrative. My final note on McCurdy's prose and structure is that for a first novel, I think in some ways it's experimental and in other ways it's very sophisticated. If you've watched this because you're curious about reading it, I would just like to reiterate that this book is incredibly graphic and deeply upsetting. So if you're curious about the discourse for one of the most highly anticipated books of this year, give it a go, but just be careful and definitely don't read it in your work break room.